everyone. I am Katie Rich. This is the Prestige Junkie Podcast. Based on the box office, you probably didn't go see Joker Folie à Deux this past weekend. It had a truly terrible domestic opening weekend of $40 million. But the good news is that it's not the only musical you'll be able to see in theaters this fall. And the even better news is that today I'm joined by someone who knows more about musicals than basically anyone I know. Vanity Fair's Chris Murphy. Hello.
Hi, Katie. It's so nice to be chatting with you again. And thank you for the compliment. I do know a lot about musicals. I will say that.
You do. I was raised on musicals, but then I meet people like you and I'm just like, oh, I have so far to go. And I mean, Chris, you know a lot about musicals in general, but right now at this point, you are the world-renowned expert on the Wicked movie. You wrote the Vanity Fair cover story about it. You have seen the movie, which we'll be able to talk about in some detail. So yeah, are you ready to keep talking about Wicked?
I mean, I've been talking about Wicked since I saw it for my 13th birthday, actually 11th birthday in 2004, at the record show. So I can definitely keep talking about it. And I had a wonderful time talking to Cynthia and Ariana for the cover story. And
your close personal friends, Cynthia and Ariana.
Personal friends,
yeah.
You know, we're always chatting and leaving voice notes to each other all the time now. But no, it was a really wonderful summer, sort of in Oz, if you will. And I really do think there's a lot to look forward to. I think there's a lot to chew on there. It's a good time. It's a good time at the Cineplex.
Yeah, musical theater people, stick with us. And so after we have this conversation, and Chris will be glad to hear this, I caught up with Cristin Milioti, who is currently on HBO's series The Penguin. But as you and I know, she got her start in musical theater, and she was wearing a Les Mis shirt for our conversation, which brought me great joy.
I love that. Yes.
So she's one of us. But so we talked to her about her work on The Penguin, her work with Colin Farrell on that show, and also some really unvarnished thoughts about the ridiculous movie industry and what it means to keep working in it. So something to look forward to. And then one more thing before we get back to Oz. Chris, if people want to hear us talk to each other even more, they can do so in person in Montclair, New Jersey, a part of the world I know you're very familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
I have some fondness as well. We'll be on stage at the Montclair Film Festival on Sunday, October 20th at 4 p.m. You can go to the Montclair Film Festival website and get tickets. We're going to talk about award season with our friend Chris Rosen of Gold Derby and some more special guests. It's going to be fun. I'm so glad you're doing this with me, Chris.
I know, with another Jersey Chris, too, you know? Jersey strong. We love it.
I know. I mean, if your entire family doesn't show up for this, like, have we done our street team research well?
I'll be mad at them. They'll be there. I guarantee it.
How many times have they seen you on New Jersey's finest stages before, and now they have to...
Less than 2,000, I'm sure.
Okay, let's talk about Wicked. As you said, Chris, it was a summer you spent in Oz. I mean, we worked together at Vanity Fair. I've witnessed the making of these cover stories up close. It really is a truly months-long process. This one had two cover stars, Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. The story itself was this really feat of making both of them the focus of the story. You're spending time with them together, separately. You're hanging out in Ariana Grande's, I think, is the house a tree house, or was there a separate house that was a tree house? I'm losing my details.
Yeah, so we hung out in sort of a bungalow, just like a residence, I would say. Who's to say, whose it is? But like in this gorgeous bungalow, and spent like a wonderful afternoon, the three of us really just hanging out and sipping on tea and matcha and really like getting to know each other. The thing with these cover stories is, Katie, as you know, it's like the stars they take a big leap, right? There's a big lack of control, Mm-hmm. We have our day and we have our time together, and then I go off and, write my little thing and do what I do. And so getting to spend that time with both, Cynthia and Ariana, and feel like I really got to know them, and they really sort of like, let their guard down, if you will. It was really special, and something that you never know if you're going to get like a couple of quotes in 20 minutes and then see you never, and then you have to go make something, spectacular out of that, or if you're going to get the opposite. And I was really lucky to have gotten the opposite.
I mean, for those of us who obsess over awards, Wicked is like one of a handful of movies kind of lingering on the horizon of like, we don't really know what to make of it awards-wise, but the stakes of this movie are so high, way beyond that. It's high for Universal, which is making the movie, for these actresses. Like, did you get a sense of how much is riding on this when you were writing the story? Yeah,
I mean, it just feels like, from talking to both of them, it's so much bigger than either of them, and both of them are already so big in their own regard. I mean, Ariana is one of the biggest pop stars in the world, one of the most followed people on Instagram of all time, like, legions and legions of fans. So that's already one big star. And then you have Cynthia Erivo, Emmy, Tony, Grammy Award winning, one award away from an Oscar. Massive
from
talent.
An EGOT, yeah.
EGOT, sorry, yeah. And Oscar and EGOT is actually what I meant. An EGOT. And also a massive talent. So there's, both of these, really formidable women are at the center of this thing that is then like humongous and so much bigger than both of them. I mean, there's a second movie on the way. There are all of these collabs. There's makeup. There's toys. There's luggage. There are all of these sort of other avenues. And it's not all just about, selling things and whatnot, but they also really care about the property. I mean, this is Wicked. This is Wizard of Oz. This is the American fairy tale. This is the, quintessential American story. This is Judy Garland. This is Idina Menzel. This is Kristen Chenoweth. This is so much bigger than just any one person. So I think they really respected the tradition of The Wizard of Oz to Wicked the novel, to Wicked the play, to their role in it. And, they take it really seriously, but not so seriously that they weren't able to have fun with it and have a good time, which I think is always the balance. And I think that's something that's really hard for people to do.
I mean, we're year past Barbie. We kind of know that like movies for girls, quote unquote, like can make money, but like that's still seen as an outlier. And Wicked is like the ultimate girl movie. No offense to you seeing it for your 11th birthday, but
it
like
100% is. And people told me at the time.
And you said it's for me too, damn it.
It's for me too.
But like, do you sense that like we're ready for another Barbie size thing? Is that what we want this to be? Like, does this make sense as like a holiday thing that every middle schooler will go see?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are. Barbie was its own thing, right? And we loved Barbie, and Barbenheimer was its own thing. And obviously, I don't like begrudge the Wicked team for being like, oh, we have this amazing, somewhat tonally similar, although definitely very different film that is geared toward women, and we also have and girls, and then we also have Gladiator. Let's try to strike magic twice, and like that actually, I'm excited. Some people are complaining about that, and it's like, well, what are marketers supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? God forbid you try to
complaining about the idea of trying to turn them into the next Barbenheimer. Is it like there was only one? We can't do this again,
and we can only have one good weekend in the movies ever of all time. Like that's not a great strategy, I think. So Wicked is a beloved, tried and true property. I mean, there's a reason it's been running on Broadway since 2003, nonstop. People know that music. They love that music. They people on TikTok do, blind alphabet tests where they just listen to different women sing the alphabet riff and decide, and they can name which people from the first national tour, the second national tour from 2010 to there's a lot of
I gotta
love.
watch this.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're incredible. I would love to do one, but I'm actually not even that good. So I think people maybe just because musical theater gets a bad rap and it feels like a niche audience in the way that like Barbie's might have felt like a niche audience, but are so much more universal. And when well done, which Barbie is really well done, and Wicked, the play, is really well done. It's an enduringly popular play. Are there, pacing issues? Are there little things we can nitpick? Of course, but it has stood the test of time. I think we're primed and ready, especially after the summer where we didn't really have a big moment. I'm sorry, Deadpool and Wolverine was not really my Barbie this year.
Not a Barbie.
Not a Barbie for me. So I've been sort of waiting for another big moment, and I think this really could do it.
You don't have to agree with me when I say this, because I know that Cynthia and Ariana have to be equal in your hearts. But like Cynthia, to me, like she's been an Oscar nominee. She's like, we kind of know what she can do. We saw her in The Color Purple. She is like known as this formidable musical theater presence. Ariana like is a giant pop star, as you said, but as an actress is a lot more untested, and to me feels like primed for discovery in this movie of like us being able to see what she can do. And I've been thinking, like, as my understanding, I don't know if this is official, that she would be campaigned as supporting actress and Cynthia would be campaigned as lead, or maybe they both would. But like, think about the supporting actress category and thinking about what Ariana Grande can do. Like, for what you can say for having seen this movie, do you think she's going to surprise people in what she pulls out here?
Well, it's so interesting that you say that. I've been an Ariana Grande fan since like day one, since 13 the musical, all right? And people forget because she's a pop star, right? Again, there's a theme here of underestimating women and things pertaining to women.
Sure.
Because she's a pop star, I think people forget that she got her start as a Broadway kid with a golden voice. She did her Nickelodeon duty and was, funny and hilarious on Victorious for years. She's got an incredible comedic sensibility and incredible comedic timing that we haven't seen showcased in like well over a decade, in like a true package. So I think
except on like SNL, which she's always incredible on.
And everyone's like, oh, she's so funny. She does all these voices. She's a theater kid down boots. And this is not only, it's such a perfect and amazing vehicle to showcase her talents that I think a lot of people have forgotten existed or don't really think they're there because they're used to, the pop star persona and whatnot. So yeah, I think she's absolutely prime. And the way that Glinda works in the story, it's so funny, so many comedic moments, but as it goes on, she really becomes the unsuspecting heart of a really sympathetic character. And obviously it's only half the story and whatnot, but there is a full, complete movie arc in one act. And while Elphaba ends sort of defying gravity, Glinda ends really down to earth, really sort of knocked down a peg down to earth in a way that I think she's hilarious. I think she's absolutely, people are going to be like really blown away by the comedy, but there's a real groundedness to both of their performances. But I think specifically from Ariana that people are not going to expect, that I think screams Best Supporting Actress, which I'm pretty sure they've officially said that, she's going to be campaigned as such.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know why I lose track of these campaign things as me in my own head.
I say, still sleeper pick, keep an eye out. Keep an eye out. You heard it here first.
Well, to talk broadly about the fall of musicals we're getting, because we do have to me, I think an unusual number of musicals, and we can talk about whether that's actually true. But you and I both saw Joker Folie, as I said. A lot of people did. I think
I'm sorry.
A lot of us have been holding a spot for Lady Gaga in a supporting actress. Who knows? She's only made this is only her third movie. The first one got an Oscar nomination. We know she sings in this movie. To me, she is blameless for the faults of Joker 2. I think she's got some pretty actually great scenes in this. But man, don't you want to see more in a Lady Gaga Harley Quinn movie?
Well, it's too bad they didn't let her do anything. Really, it's like she basically it's not that she didn't have that much screen time, because she is on screen a fair amount, but it was so lackluster. And I remember reading reviews, particularly Richard Lawson's review, saying that they wasted Lady Gaga. And I was like, how do you waste Lady Gaga? That doesn't even make sense to me.
How is she in a room with you and you don't just be like, put the camera on her?
And you don't use her. And it was really a waste, to the point where I understand why she made an album Harlequin, sort of based off songs in the movie. And I'm like, I get why she did that, because she doesn't really get to do anything in the movie. She doesn't get to really sing these songs in the way that you would want her to, or in a way that is dramatically interesting most of the time. So of course she was like, well, I put a lot of work into this and I actually really fell in love with this music and this genre. Let me actually get some bang for my buck. So yeah, I feel like she's definitely blameless. And when she was given a chance, I'd say, If My Friends Could See Me Now, part of when she got to do a little of That's Entertainment.
Or We're Going to Build a Mountain one.
We're Going to Build a Mountain when she gets to do that. Some of these dream sequences, we're seeing there's a sliver of a shred of what this could be if somebody who didn't hate musical theater and and musicals crafted it. But it just seems like the person behind the camera, Todd Phillips, might not share that same love for the art form, and might have thought he was sort of subverting it or breaking it apart, but really it was a lot of sound and fury signifying absolutely nothing.
It's such a strange, because people had said beforehand, being like, well, I don't even know if it's really a musical. And I think it is a musical. It's got musical numbers. It's got songs that are trying to express the character's inner feelings, but it doesn't ever commit to the musical numbers in such a strange way. Musical fantasy sequences are such a, since Chicago, the really common way to fit musicals into movies. But it's he doesn't know that you can do it outside of just a black box, that they all feel the same in this strange way. I feel like I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking about why it doesn't work, which is maybe not a great use of my time, but I'm going to do it.
Well, no, I feel the same way, because it's we have Chicago, one Best Picture. We literally have the blueprint for how you do a musical set in a courtroom, how you do, and with fantasy sequences. That is a blueprint. I get if you want to change that or subvert that, but this was, at the end of the day, a musical set in a courtroom with fantasy sequences. And yet it didn't take any notes. It sort of looked at Chicago and was poo-poo that. We're going to do our own much worse version and have it also be sort of incoherent in terms of when they're singing, is this a diegetic song? Is this not a diegetic song? Are we in his brain? It's fantasy, but what is a dream? What is not a dream? The dreams are all kind of boring and sort of sleepy and whatnot.
And kind of the same. They're all the standard love songs. So it's every fantasy sequence is a different variation on We're in Love. And you're like, that's not storytelling. That's just repeating the same theme.
It's so redundant and it's so repetitive. And when there are glimpses of like something interesting. I mean, I would say like the best thing for me was like, oh, there was some like interesting supporting. I love to see Catherine Keener. I love to see a Brendan Gleeson. Sing a little of this, do a little of that. But because it was kept it was supposed to be this tete-a-tete folie à deux, if you will, between Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix, and it never really went anywhere or got interesting, and they never really sang anything that then furthered the storyline more so than like, we're in love. It was just like, what are we doing? How many times do we have to hear the same thing? Like, she's obsessed with him and he's like maybe crazy. I get it. I see it. Let's push the story forward. We can do. And then there was the whole uproar of like somebody tweeted, and God bless his soul, was like, sad things can't be musicals. So, and then the whole internet just was like, you're wrong. Have you ever seen the second act of a Sondheim musical?
Like, let's start with West Side Story and go from there.
Like, it can be done, but it has to be done well. And this was just executed so poorly. And I don't even think it was a bad idea. I was so excited for this movie until even after I heard it was bad, I was still like, maybe.
Okay.
And then I saw it for myself, and it just didn't work. It didn't work.
I'm glad I saw it for myself, too. I feel like, if you were interested in musicals as a form, seeing it when it is strangely applied in this context is like worth knowing, even if it's not a good movie.
It's good to see things that don't work.
It's the parallel of the jukebox musical, right? Where like even the Mamma Mia's have this problem to some extent, where like the songs are like sort of related to what's going on and more or less just like shoehorned in there. So it's what's interesting about Emilia Perez, which I know you haven't seen, but it's like a major Oscar contender. I've talked about it on the show. It's got all these original songs, which are. Did you ever see the movie Annette, the Adam Driver Baby Annette movie?
Yeah, a while.
Like, the songs are like feel like more in that vein. Like they're not full blown musical numbers. They're not standards. They have kind of like this atonal, like odd quality to them, and like they're singing about things you wouldn't expect. And I really wonder about how that's going to go over. And like, I guess my question for you is like, Netflix is really high on Emilia Perez. I am too. I wonder about how the musical aspect of it will either win off or repel Oscar voters, because since Chicago, I think we keep trying to put musicals up there and they never quite get across the Best Picture finish line. Where do you land on like how popular are musicals actually when it comes to awards these days?
It's hard because I think there are some people who are just like, it's a musical, I'm out. Like there's just not even a way in there, and that is I
don't understand those people, but okay.
I don't understand those people. I think that's really close-minded, but I do know they exist. I've heard from them. They've made their presence known to me.
Their tweets have been viewed.
They're definitely been viewed. I think, if anything, it's interesting the way that you're describing the music in terms of a little atonal, not sort of what you expect, and not like a bunch of standards, a bunch of songs that people know and love already and have their own opinions and sort of takes on. And that could be, I think, a pretty interesting way into sort of like, again, like playing with the form and taking what we might expect. I mean, just the log line alone, a trans story, a drug cartel, and Selena Gomez. There's a lot going on already that are
speaking about pop divas.
Speaking of pop divas, that make it sort of interesting and off kilter in a way you're like, oh, interesting. And then if the music can, without being literally off-putting or let's say bad, but keep people interested. I think a lot of times people can zone out in musicals. They're like, it all sounds the same. I don't know why they're singing. And really interesting songwriting and melodic structures and lyricism, really interesting, the form can engage viewers in a way that I can totally see them potentially zoning out in something else. So I think that, if anything, that makes me more excited to see it, to know that it's not just like a bunch of like, standards in a row. Yeah,
it's like the songs are like people's inner lives, but there's also like big scale musical numbers that kind of just like set up the world of this. And there's like lines that are sung. And of course, it's sung in Spanish. So you're reading the translation and you're like, I cannot believe that's a song lyric, that someone is like singing that out loud. It's like, it's one of those movies you kind of watch the whole time being like, I can't believe they're getting away with this. And like, I'm enjoying it. And then it goes in like, places for the Toronto Audience Awards. So it's like, okay, maybe like people are more on board with musicals than I thought. And I'm like delighted by it. But I'm always kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop with musicals,
Yeah, I definitely am too. And there are a bunch of musicals that have come out in recent years that I think were, good, not great, or, or that really were, going for Oscar buzz. I think I just got so sad walking today because I was thinking, it's so sad that they just made an Into the Woods musical, because and it was mid, which is so sad because that's my favorite musical of all time, Into the Woods. Mm-hmm. How do you make a mid version of that? And yet that's sort of what happened. It's weird that can happen. So I guess, maybe that was a victim of expectations, but I think because it's so new and so fresh, that really could bode well for Emilia Perez. Though I think it's going to be divisive. I'm already seeing people I respect on both sides love it and hate it. So I haven't seen it yet. I think I am primed a little bit more to love it just from what I
would
know
suspect
about it.
You would, but I do want to know. Yeah, it's and like divisiveness. If there's passion behind it, that can still drive a campaign. You know, if people like want to ride hard for it one way or another, that's kind of all you need.
Yeah.
So Wicked and Emilia Perez are kind of the big live action musicals you've got in the mix. But for my money, the interesting showdown is Moana 2 and Mufasa, which like are both from Disney, so they're not really rivals. But you've got Lin-Manuel Miranda doing the songs for Mufasa and not for Moana 2, which he did the songs for in the first one. And like I have seen Moana literally over 100 times probably. Like those songs are very, but you know, the first one came out when the year my first child was born. So like I know those songs inside and out, and like you know a little bit more about these songwriters who've been tapped to do the songs for Moana 2. They do have a pedigree. Should I hold out hope that these songs can do the job?
Yeah, I will say all respect to Lin-Manuel Miranda. I do think as a writer, he's sort of top notch, unbeatable. But he's also influenced a lot of, he's been around for a while. He's influenced a lot of writers that have come in the next generation. I would say the writers of the Moana 2 musical, they made a really popular TikTok musical, the Bridgerton musical on TikTok. Yeah. That was like kind of spoofy, kind of funny, but ultimately like had some really quite interesting songs and melodic structures and was like much of Lin-Manuel Miranda's work, insanely popular, right? Like earwormy, and like if you listen to it, if you're into that, like it really hit. So I definitely wouldn't necessarily give up hope that like Moana 2, all the songs are going to be, you know, mush just because Lin decided to move on to another potentially bigger project, bigger IP, you know, with Lion King. I would not sleep on Moana 2. I think that they've definitely proven, the songwriters, I think it's Emily Bear and
Abigail Barlow,
Yes, and Abigail Barlow, Grammy nominated. Like they've done some really like interesting and catchy work. And I think what you want from Moana 2, I think it's going to be catchy, earwormy. Maybe in a way that like as a mother of two young kids, you might not want to hear it all the time. But
literally my youngest child took there's an IMAX glasses or a 3D glasses box at the movie theater with Moana 2 on it. And he took a picture next to the box for the 3D glasses return because he was so excited about Moana 2. So we'll be there no matter what. That's happening. Well, where are you on Mufasa right now? Like, I mean, Barry Jenkins is directing this movie. That's like an endless source of fascination for those of us who have seen his movies. I think maybe I kind of get why, but maybe we'll understand more when we see it. Like, should we just be high on Mufasa 2? Well, not Mufasa 2, Mufasa 1, Lion King, live action. You see how complicated this is.
Well, it is really complicated. Yeah. And I have to sort of admit something. Like I really haven't admitted to anyone. I really can't do the live action Disney remakes.
I think that's an okay stance to take.
I think it's an okay stance, but as a musical theater person who grew up loving all of those, animated films, not since Beauty and the Beast, not a Beauty and the Beast, not Little Mermaid, not Aladdin, not Lion King. I can't. That's a big red flag, big X marks the spot I don't want to be for me personally. So with all love and respect, I can't say that I'm like really like high on Mufasa.
Are you willing to give it a shot?
I'm willing to listen to the soundtrack maybe and wait to see what people say. And honestly, only for, R.I.P. James Earl Jones, the original Mufasa.
Is right. Is his voice going to be in it? Yeah.
I wonder if his voice is going to be in it. So for that, I'm willing to, and Barry Jenkins is amazing, and it will always have a soft spot in my heart. But yeah, my expectations, and like my own like interest level once we're doing these. And I know Mufasa isn't like the shot for shot remake that so many of these other things are. Yeah, basically,
it has potential to be something different.
So that makes me slightly more inclined to see it, but I think the whole thing is just it reeks of the AI death of art to me.
Well, I'm realizing talking that it's been a while since new Lin-Manuel Miranda music has been out there. Like he did songs for this movie that was released on Netflix during the pandemic called not Rio, Vivo. Have you ever seen Vivo? The songs
I did not see Vivo.
Good. I will go to my grave telling people they ought to hear the songs from Vivo. But he was so insanely productive for so long, so ever present. Like you could not avoid him in the end of the 2010s. And now he's kind of, it feels like a quieter comeback, but like he's influential for a reason, right? Like his songs are really distinctive, have a real power. Like I do think there is potential for these Mufasa songs to pop up and have their moment and put him back in the spotlight again.
Yeah, and we can't forget that he literally doesn't have an Oscar because they bet on the wrong song from Encanto. He would have won if they had just picked We Don't Talk About Bruno. They didn't realize what a gem they had, so they went with the more sentimental
think
song.
About this for the rest of my life.
Rest of my life, I'll never forget it. And now, he's still, Pasek and Paul and Bobby Lopez, they all have their EGOTs, and he's sort of like waiting,
I know.
Will it be Mufasa? We'll see. But it's not like he could easily have had,
I know.
He even, will accidentally release a bop that will
Well, and he lost to Pasek and Paul for the song from La La Land for a moment, because How Far I'll Go was the Moana song the same year as La La Land.
And City of Stars.
You can't, I don't know. I go back and forth on that one. Like City of Stars is a good song, but How Far I'll Go was like a once in a decade song.
100%. And I think one has probably stood the test of time. Let's just say I'm only singing one of those at karaoke, and it's not City of Stars.
Well, if we're going to talk about original song and Lin-Manuel maybe getting in there, we cannot forget that Diane Warren is out there in the mix this year. So is it time to just wrap it all up and say it's finally Diane's year? Like a Diane Lin-Manuel showdown does feel like it's got high potential for drama, if nothing else.
If she wasn't going to win for the Cheeto song, then how could it happen this year? Nothing but respect for Diane Warren, but at some point, she got her honorary Oscar. So I feel like we are released from the responsibility of having to make it happen in a maybe less organic way than it should. And, and if the quality is what it's been for the last 5 or so years, it's not Aerosmith territory anymore. We're not releasing the gems and the sort of the anthems that we were in the 90s. So again, it's okay for people to slow down. Stephen Sondheim slowed down at the end of his career. And so, and not that is the end of Diane Warren's career.
No, she's probably going to make 20 more movies.
She's probably going to make 20 more movies in the next 4 years. But I hope that there is a good song among them. And once there is, by all means, I'll vote for her. But it's been a minute since I've heard one. Full stop.
Well, it's also crazy to bring it back to Wicked that my understanding is there's not an original song in the first half of Wicked. I think there might be one in the second half. So I don't get that choice. It feels like an Ariana Grande nom would have been a slam dunk.
Well, slam dunk. But I also, as we've seen, like they're breaking it into 2 movies. I feel like it might be hard to find space. Like, you'd think that they'd be able to find space to sort of shoehorn in a bunch of new songs, but look, it's pretty full. It's pretty big, pretty full show. So I think they probably were like, let's just do the first. And most of the best songs, if we're being honest, are in the first half. That's our Defying Gravity. It's our Popular. It's our What Is This Feeling? It's our The Wizard and I.
Yep.
The back half has some great songs too, but there's more, I think, room in the second act to shoehorn in or to add new music. So I actually respect that they didn't really mess with the formula all that much for the first.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Chris, I'm so glad we got to talk about Wicked. You tell me if this is not fit for air, but my understanding is there's plenty more reporting from your cover story that you might be able to share as the movie gets closer to release. So there's still more exclusives coming our way.
Yeah, there's more Wicked in store. Something Wicked this way comes again and again. So you got to stay tuned. It's spooky season. It's the season of the witch. So
there we go. So. Well, if people still haven't read your cover story, it's at vanityfair.com and you're there on Still Watching podcast, Still Weekly. I think here I am doing your plugs for you, but it's all still it's muscle memory. It's right there.
I love it. Thank you.
And yeah, everyone should come see us in Montclair very soon. There'll be lots more where this came from. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Again, if you're listening on Spotify, you can answer this week's poll. I want to know which of these fall musicals that Chris and I just talked about you are anticipating the most. As for last week's poll, I asked about which film you thought would get the biggest bump out of the New York Film Festival. It looks like Anora, continuing to be an award season favorite, just topped Nickel Boys, which I would agree got a pretty big bump out of New York Film Festival as well. So take a moment to answer that poll if you can, and then I'll be right back with my conversation with Cristin Milioti. So as you heard me tell Chris earlier, Cristin Milioti really was wearing a Les Mis t-shirt when we spoke earlier this week. And that's maybe what made me start by talking about the really big, operatic, almost musical theater-worthy feelings of The Penguin, the HBO series in which she now stars. She has been an avowed Batman fan since she was a kid, like way more than you would even hear from people who star in a superhero movie and talk about how much they like it. She means it. We talked about the Tim Burton Batman movies and their kind of big, bold feelings that captured her attention as a kid. And then what it was like to step into a version of that world on this show, playing Sophia Falcone, the daughter of the Gotham City crime boss, Carmine Falcone, and someone who is very deeply connected to the show's title character, played by Colin Farrell. You might remember him playing the role of the Penguin in the movie The Batman a couple years ago. He is once again almost unrecognizable under prosthetics as this character. But there is a lot of really deep connections between Kristin's character, Sophia, and the Penguin. And you get to see a lot of unspoken emotions, a lot of history in their scenes together in the first 3 episodes that have aired so far. And then in the 4th episode, which is airing this Sunday, you get to see where a lot of that backstory came from. We didn't get into spoilers, but Kristin and I kind of talked about what that 4th episode brought out from her, what it's like to play a multi-layered character, especially at this point in her career. She's been working for a long time, and despite the myths about women in Hollywood, she's getting offered a fascinating role like this at this point, and presumably there will be more to come. As you might guess, she is a fascinating person to talk to, had a lot to say about Hollywood, about the strikes, everything else. And now you can hear it all in my conversation with the star of HBO's The Penguin, Cristin Milioti. When you've been talking about this role, you have, talked about how you had been like a Batman kid for a long time, which I think is something you hear often from people who, like superheroes are like, the modern day gods. But you sound very sincere about it, and like your like very specific Batman affection, which I find impressive. Like that really feels like something you have carried with you since childhood.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. It's very profound and meaningful because I was so obsessed with these films growing up, and they were like such a huge part of like what I would play in the backyard.
This is like the Burton Batmans we're talking about.
This is the Burton Batmans.
Yeah.
And the Schumacher Batman Forever. I sort of tapped out around Batman and Robin, actually. And then I re-entered,
of course,
via Christopher Nolan. But I also was very into the animated Batman. Like I was just
the Adam West show. That's the one I watched growing up.
Adam West, I knew. I think Adam West, I would watch like clips with my dad. Mm-hmm. I think we maybe like had a couple on VHS, but it was really like the Tim Burton ones and Batman Forever that I just could not get enough of.
Is there something about the like heightened world of like, because I feel like Batman gets like this operatic drama more than other superhero stuff. Do you think that's part of like why returning to it as an adult felt so validating to you, that like that the tone suits you in some way?
I think so. I also it's so funny you use the word operatic, because Colin and I talked a lot about that, where we kept referring to the show as like an opera, because it does get so like huge. And that is the world of Batman. But because no one has superpowers, I've always felt that that's actually like what some of the secret sauce in it is, that it's like truly people fueled by their own hurt and rage and creating these personas that are larger than life and are like, including Batman. Like that is actually something I thought was so beautifully wrought. Am I using that word correctly?
Yeah.
In Matt Reeves' The Batman, was that you had these scenes of Bruce Wayne like stitching a cape in a cave at night, like while listening to Nirvana. And you just were like, oh my God, what an incredibly damaged person. Like, like who's also going out into the world, like looking to damage. Obviously, like he's on the more right side of things, but like I've just always found that so fascinating too, like the interchangeable. I thought that was so in Batman Returns, when Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer are slow dancing and they realize who the other is. And it's like so emotional, and so that they share this, like, for lack of a better term, like kink. They share this
that's
like
totally the right term,
passion and whatever, but but they're on opposite sides. And like, not to sound like I'm like an executive somewhere, but it's like a really great balance of like grounded but heightened. Do you know what I mean? But it is. And it's also thrilling because you're seeing these people do things, when Batman is like going out into the night and beating people up and, saving someone who's getting mugged, like who hasn't had that fantasy?
Sure, yeah.
And who hasn't had a day where they feel so hurt. I mean, we live in a world that is like defined by this of like, someone is so hurt that they like have to hurt other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it captures it really beautifully while also being like so emotional. And then in a lot of them, so campy and so funny. Like there's a lot of like humor in Batman.
Yeah.
And, like Heath Ledger's Joker is like so outrageously disturbing and it's so funny.
And really funny. Yep.
Like, and it's, and I think like Jack Nicholson as well, like that whole push-pull has always really, really appealed to me.
So on the Penguin, as people are hearing this, the third episode will have aired. The fourth episode coming up is one that really goes deep into Sophia's backstory. There's kind of learning a lot more about who she is beyond this like hangman thing. But I think you're seeing glimpses of it, like in episode 2, where it's your brother's funeral, where there's this like hard exterior and like a complete meltdown happening behind her eyes kind of the entire time.
Yeah.
And like, not to spoil too much about what's coming up, but like, how did you work with that in those early episodes to kind of have that, like that broken person thing we were talking about, where you've created a shell around you and like, but kind of giving away the game a little bit in the process? How does that build up?
Wow. The honest answer is I don't know. And then some of it is like A, I don't know. B, I had so much brilliant material to work with. Like when we started filming, I had the first 4 episodes. So I knew about her backstory. It was really 5 through 8 that was sort of, they were still being like judged as we were shooting. I mean, I knew what the events, but like we weren't getting drafts.
Well, that's more of a classic TV way to make things, I guess, anyway. Like, that's how it worked for decades.
Exactly. So going into those first 3 before you find out what has happened to her, I knew what was coming. And then Lauren LaFranc, our absolutely brilliant showrunner, her and I, we'd had so many hours of conversations about her history and where things were headed. So I had all that. And then I think what is so brilliant about her writing, like one of my favorite scenes in episode 2 is the scene where I see my cousin who I haven't seen in a long time and she flinches when I go to touch her daughter. And it's like such a, not to sound like an actor, I hate when actors talk like this, where they're like, it's such a meal. But like you read a scene like that and you're like, oh, this is so great because no one is, it's the dream. It's like no one is saying what's actually happening.
Yeah, yeah.
It's such pleasantries and it's so hurtful. And it's so, and then even the way she handles it, even the way she like touches that child's hair is so loaded. Yeah. And those are the things that are the most fun to play. And I think they give you some real leeway into showing what's going on deep down without telling you, which I mean, this sounds that's so rudimentary, but like, that's great writing. That's great. That's like what we want to see. Yeah. That's what I like to see. It's what I like to act in. So yeah, it was kind of like a multi-faceted way of getting there. You just start to, it's like being shot out of a cannon at first. And it's, you go home every day just writhing in embarrassment at what you've done. And then eventually they have so much of it in the can that you're like, okay, they can't fire me now. And then you start to like calm down a little bit. Yeah. And
that is everything you make?
Everything I make. Everything I make. In fact, I have an incredible group of friends, many of whom are actors, and they have, with a lot of love and kindness and light, been like, hey, so every time you do a job, for the first couple months, you are like, I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get fired. And it's like a double-edged sword of like, I love and have been lucky enough to work on things that scare me. And I think part of that, in the best way, that are like also very challenging. And I think part of that is that you're just like, oh no, am I like horrible? Am I like really messing this up?
Am I scared in the good way, or am I scared in the bad way?
Am I scared in the good way, or am I scared in the bad way? Or am I not sticking this landing? Like, especially when you care so much about the thing that you're in, which I do. And yeah, it's just like, it's weird process.
Well, like you've been really up in front of this weird new reality the last 10 years where there's just TV shows all the time on all these different networks and really ambitious, interesting stuff that like sometimes it gets watched by a ton of people and sometimes it kind of comes and goes. And I wonder, like, you have the experience of making it and you don't get fired and you get like the work you want out of it. But then when something like either lands or doesn't land, do you insulate yourself from that in any way? Do you just kind of take that as a bonus? Like, how do you navigate that of just like knowing how your work is going to be found in the TV world that we have now?
That's such a great question. And it is insane making and vulnerable. And it's also kind of like life where you just eventually get to the point where you're like, oh, I have no control and I have no idea, actually, like what is going to be seen versus what's not. And like, but it feels crazy because it's also, there's so much work that goes into it too. Like, I see anything, and even if it's not for me, I know that it was almost impossible to make. Next to impossible. And that no one had a life, and that everyone had stomach problems, and everyone was like going home and just being like, what am I doing? And missing their kids' birthdays and like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I wondered if Palm Springs is an inflection point in that somehow, where you have this like Sundance premiere and everyone goes nuts and then the world shuts down and then it's not getting in theaters, but then everyone manages to find it and it's like, there's the no power thing. Like I wondered if that experience specifically helped you get to where you are now of like.
Well, for sure. I mean, to say that was like an unprecedented time of man. I mean, I know we've had pandemics, but like that was crazy. I think that like, I'm so grateful I got to see that movie in a movie theater before everything shut down. Yeah. And I remember feeling, like a sort of swirl of things of like, so grateful that I was even a part of something that could come out because like everything had screeched to a halt, but sad that people wouldn't experience it as a group. Yeah. Because also like my yearning for groups and yearning for, I love to watch movies in a movie theater. It is like the minute that was back, I want to be experiencing that. So I was like disappointed that it wouldn't be experienced in that way. And then, there was this whole other color to it where it was like, because we were all in our homes, I wonder to this day if like so many more people saw it. We were supposed to have a theatrical release. And I think we were supposed to come out at the same time as like some huge Marvel movie. I don't remember which one. And I wonder like if that had happened, if we would have gotten lost or, we were so like, probably because everyone was feeling that they were inside trapped living the same day over and over. It was probably able to like reach more people, even if it was in a way that was not how it was like intended. But like, how are you, that also was like incredible. Yeah. Incredible. And I still get stopped for that movie all the time. And it's,
I bet. Forever.
I hope forever. And like, it also like hit people at such a specific time too. Yeah. So it's like a huge honor to have been a part of that. But like would I have been able to predict any of that?
Yeah. You have to ride with it.
My God, no.
What was the last great like going see movies in theaters experience you had? Is there anything recent that you were like, I'm going to see it on the big screen and it was like totally worth it?
Yeah. Weirdly, what's coming to mind is not something I saw recently, but I saw After Sun in a movie theater.
That's a great movie to see in a theater, which you wouldn't think.
My God, you wouldn't think.
Small.
It's so small and it's such a beautiful slow burn that you have to just like sit with. And sitting in a darkened room, like sobbing with strangers is one of the most like, I just think it's like a place of worship. I mean, I love it. It's why I continue to put up, I think, with this like completely mentally ill industry that is crazy making and is bad for us all. But After Sun is one that I think of where I'm like, oh, that felt like a very spiritual
like
experience.
You all went to a place
like
together.
We all went to a place together. And, not to like spoil anything for anyone who's listening to this, but like when they're dancing in the club, all of us thinking of our own people and, just brutal. Brutal in the best way
heartbreaking
possible.
It is funny how you're like, I've seen a couple movies this year, mostly at festivals, where like, and you can just hear everyone sobbing and like that doesn't sound good, but it's great. Like when you're part of a room full of people crying,
God.
Who would have guessed?
It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible.
You keep talking about how crazy the industry is, which is 100% true, and not everyone says out loud as often. And like this is kind of a dated question because the strikes have been over for a while, but I wonder if the strikes having that pause and then coming back gave you any moments of reflection, if it like made you reconsider anything, you came back to work in some different way than before the strikes happened. Has there been enough time to notice any kind of shift like that?
No. I think the thing that I noticed was that I think that the feeling of that existential crisis of like, where's your heart? Like, I don't, obviously what we were all asking for, we weren't asking for the moon.
Yeah.
And I understand that these are businesses to run. And I understand too that we also depend on these places to like make the things that you hope touch people or, entertain people or whatever. But that's still reverberating of like, oh, wow, you were really willing to let us all suffer. And the crews got hit so hard.
Yeah.
And like, I still struggle with like, where's your humanity? Like, where's, we were all just trying to ask for like pretty basic things, like, don't replace us with computers.
Yeah. Like, how do you go back to work and act normal after that?
It's and I'm also so, proud that both those unions struck, and it was also like horrible that it had to get to that place and all these things. But I don't know. I can only speak for myself, but I think that those existential, for lack of a better term, reverberations are still there. And that's also, I think, like the world at large as well.
Yeah. Which it sounds like it's made you continue thinking about like, what do you want from in this industry? What do you actually want to chase? What's worth your sacrifice? What isn't worth your sacrifice? Like, do those questions just kind of keep coming up as you, like, I don't know, get older and think about what you want out of this?
Definitely. I mean, I think your relationship to time and the value of time changes as you get older too. I also really enjoy what I do. Like, I love what I do so much. It's crazy. I think that's also, sorry not to take it back to the strikes, but what was like so painful, one of the many, many things that was so painful about those strikes was I was like, we all love this, which is why we like continue, which is why we're fighting, and which is why we also have like put up with things that are like crazy, because we're all a bunch of like kids who made movies in their backyards and love movies and love TV and love all this stuff. And it felt like so predatory in a way to be like, oh, you do kind of have us in a bind because our hearts are tied into this, not to be like, I don't know if everyone feels that way, but anyway.
There's another job you're going to go get just as easily because like you're stuck doing this for regardless of what happens in the industry because you love it.
Yeah.
You gave an interview a couple years ago, I think a little while, like pre-pandemic, talking about like casting notices where you get like descriptions of female characters and all is more or less like, she's cute and we like her. And like, Sophia Falcone is so different from that. And I don't know how often roles like that come around, but do you feel like as you get older, some of that likability pressure goes away, that there's like more avenues, that there's more you're able to like pursue? Like, I know that's kind of against what everyone always says about like actresses as they get older, but it feels like this role suggests that there's more out there.
Oh my God. I mean,
I wonder if it feels that way to you.
Yeah, completely. Like, I mean, I think that was part of the pressure that I put on myself was that I was so obsessed with this role and had been wanting to do something like this for such a long time. And I've gotten to do a lot of like stuff that I love. I also think the industry is changing as well in a positive way. I don't know why this is coming to my mind, but like I was obsessed with the movie Tar. And, my God. And I remember being like, would that have been made like 10 years ago? Or like maybe it was, obviously we have like so many examples, but sometimes it feels like in the last couple of years that people are also like gravitating more toward that as well.
Yeah. Well, I feel like realizing we're into this point, haven't talked about Colin Farrell yet. Which, you've talked about like, you saw him in that makeup pretty much every day. Like you guys would talk to each other as people, but like that was what he was kind of like encased inside, even though it's really incredible makeup. And I was thinking about, as Sophia, there's a lot of stillness in your performance and there's a lot of stillness in what he's doing. Is that something that like you ever notice kind of reflecting back at each other, like creating this dynamic between these characters, that you're both kind of like holding yourself so still in these scenes together?
No, I never noticed that. Or I didn't notice it in the moment for sure. I know what you're talking about, but like I didn't notice that, and it certainly wasn't conscious. But I think one of the other like magic things that I love about what we do is like just stuff starts happening that's like, I like that you're a smaller part of a bigger thing, and like things move through you, and you know, him and I have a specific dynamic that would only be specific to the two of us. Like obviously like that's, And he's such an extraordinary actor. I mean, my God, is he special. And so like present and there.
Yeah.
And an incredible partner. So I also felt like it just always felt like we had a lot to mine, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, talk about like things that aren't said. Like there's so much subtext and history that like unfolds so slowly over the course of the show of what's going on between these two people.
Yeah.
So like, I know spoilers are scary. We don't want to mess with the wrath of DC. Yeah. I know that's like the thing that all the Marvel actors joke about, but it's like so real. But as people are listening to this, episode 4 is coming up. We don't want to spoil what we're going to learn about Sophia, but like, how do you feel about people getting ready to see it, knowing that episode is such a spotlight on you, that there is so much going on in there? Do you get nervous, or is it just exciting?
It's both. Like,
okay.
I think it's nervous. It's like always nerve-wracking to put things out in the world that you care about. Just because you're like, well, hope they like it.
Here's my heart on a
Here's
platter.
my heart. Yeah, like, here we go. I loved this. Are you going to love it? Or are you going to be like, this is bad? And so that's like always part of it for sure. But I'm also excited because I love that episode. So I mean, I love our show so much. And I'm not just saying that as someone who's like, promoting it. I love this show and I love this character so deeply and so fiercely, and so I'm excited for people to like learn more about her.
Yeah, you're like introducing somebody important to you to your friends and family around the world.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. And especially because you learn so much about her. So it's both.
This show is edited by Brett Fuchs and co-produced by Brett Fuchs and me. Our theme music is by Dave Gonzalez. Thank you again to my co-host, Chris Murphy. Get the Prestige Junkie newsletter by going to theankler.com and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, where you can answer this week's poll, or on Apple or anywhere else you get your podcasts. We will see you next week.